My sister-in-law gave my son a DNA test kit for Thanksgiving to prove he wasn't my husband's. But when her own son took one too, we found out her kids weren't her husband's. I met my husband Declan in our late 20s at a community fundraiser for the nursing home where I work. Our eyes met across the room, and within weeks, we were inseparable. After 2 years of dating, filled with weekend camping trips, late-night conversations about our dreams, and meeting each other's families, we got married in a small ceremony at his parents' backyard. Since then, we've been living a happy, peaceful life in our modest suburban home that we've slowly made our own. Our bond seemed unbreakable, built on trust, shared dreams, and the mutual understanding that comes from both working in caring professions. Together, we welcomed our beautiful son Oliver into the world after nearly a year of fertility treatments and anxious waiting. He's been our pride and joy every day since. Now 5 years old, Oliver fills our days with laughter, endless questions about how things work, and the kind of boundless energy that only children seem to possess. We felt like the perfect little family, complete in our simplicity, and I thought nothing could come between us. That was until Vanessa, my sister-in-law, decided to throw a wrench into everything. Vanessa and I had never truly gotten along. From the moment Declan introduced me to her at their family Sunday dinner, there was an underlying tension between us that felt like static electricity, uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. I had tried to be friendly, bringing homemade cookies to her housewarming and offering to help when she hosted family gatherings, but it was clear that Vanessa had other plans for our relationship. At her lavish wedding to Gregory, she accused me of trying to overshadow her because I wore a cream-colored dress. "You're trying to look like a bride at my wedding," she hissed at me during the reception, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my arm. Now mind you, this wasn't a decision I made on a whim. Vanessa had specifically chosen for all her bridesmaids to wear cream, insisting it would photograph beautifully against her designer gown. Yet, on her big day, it somehow became about me stealing the spotlight. She threw a tantrum in the bridal suite, turning what should have been her day of joy into an awkward mess for everyone, with her mother trying to calm her down while makeup artists hovered nervously. From that point on, it was a constant game of snide comments, backhanded compliments, and petty actions that would have seemed childish even to Oliver. If I wore a new dress to a family dinner, Vanessa would say, "That's nice, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." Didn't have the budget for the designer version, huh? If Oliver hit a milestone like learning to read or ride a bike, she would find a way to downplay it, comparing him to her own son, Hunter. Hunter was reading chapter books by that age, she'd say with that tight smile of hers, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was exhausting, but Declan and I always took the high road, often debriefing in whispered conversations after family gatherings. We didn't want to let family drama ruin our lives, and besides, we wanted Oliver and Hunter to grow up close, like brothers, despite the age difference and their mother's strained relationship. However, things took a dark turn this past Thanksgiving when Vanessa decided to stir the pot in a way that no one expected. After our turkey dinner, when everyone was gathering in the living room of her immaculate townhouse for dessert, she presented Oliver with an elegantly wrapped box. "For my science-loving nephew," she announced, her voice carrying across the room as she captured the moment on her phone for her Instagram followers. Inside was one of those DNA testing kits that everyone seems to be using these days, the premium version that costs nearly twice what the standard kit does. Initially, I didn't think much of it. Oliver has always had an interest in science. He has a collection of rocks and fossils that Declan helps him identify, and he loves learning about family history. But something about Vanessa's smug smile when she handed him the kit didn't sit right with me. Her eyes flickered between Oliver and Declan in a way that made my stomach tighten. I could feel there was more to this gift than met the eye, like a beautifully wrapped package with something venomous inside. Later that evening, as we were loading leftovers into the car to take home, Declan pulled me aside in the driveway, his face troubled in the glow of the streetlights. "Did you notice how weird Vanessa was being about that gift?" he whispered, glancing back at the house where Oliver was saying goodbye to his cousins. He said that Vanessa had made some strange, almost cryptic comments to him while they were washing dishes, remarks about finally getting some answers, and how the truth always comes out in families eventually. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the November air. It didn't take long for my nursing training to kick in as I mentally put two and two together. Oliver has bright green eyes that strangers often comment on, while both Declan and I have warm brown eyes. Of course, anyone with even a basic understanding of genetics knows that recessive traits like green eyes can skip generations. My maternal grandfather had the same striking green eyes. But Vanessa had been making subtle, passive-aggressive comments for years, hinting with a raised eyebrow or a too long stare that maybe Declan wasn't really Oliver's father. This gift was Vanessa's way of planting seeds of doubt in our marriage, a calculated move designed to make Declan question Oliver's parentage and undermine the stability we'd built. I was furious, my hands shaking as I drove us home, Oliver chattering happily in the back seat about his new science gift. How dare she try to turn something as innocent as a child's curiosity into a tool for her petty games? But Declan and I refused to let her win. After Oliver was asleep, we sat at our kitchen table with mugs of tea, and Declan reached across to hold my hand. "I know the truth," he said firmly, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Nothing will ever make me doubt that Oliver is ours." Our love and trust in each other were strong, built through years of supporting each other through late nights with a colicky baby, through my mother's illness, through the everyday challenges that forge a marriage. We weren't about to let Vanessa's poisonous actions shake that foundation. We agreed to let Oliver take the test if he wanted to, confident that the results would only confirm what we already knew. Oliver is our son, and no test would ever change that. Oliver, completely unaware of the tension brewing beneath the surface, was excited about the science behind the DNA test. He peppered us with questions as we read through the instructions together. "Will it tell me if I'm part dinosaur?" he asked with such earnestness that Declan and I couldn't help but laugh, the tension momentarily broken. He loved the idea of learning about his ancestors and where his family came from, already planning to take the results to school for show and tell. So we helped him with the process, carefully following each step, as Oliver insisted on doing as much as he could himself, and he sent off the kit with a proud trip to the mailbox. Meanwhile, Vanessa's son, Hunter, had been watching all of this unfold with great interest during our family gatherings. Being a curious 14-year-old with a passion for technology and science, Hunter decided he wanted to take a DNA test as well. He started posting about it on his social media accounts, sharing his excitement about discovering his genetic heritage. Gregory, Vanessa's husband, thought it would be a fun family activity that aligned with Hunter's interests, so they went ahead and ordered a kit for him too. "It'll be cool to compare results with Oliver," Hunter told us over text, sending a picture of himself swabbing his cheek. What started as harmless curiosity, sparked by Vanessa's calculated gift, soon spiraled into a family disaster that none of us saw coming. A few weeks later, Oliver's results came back, and as expected, everything was as it should be. Declan was his father, no question about it. "Look, Dad," Oliver exclaimed, showing Declan the simplified results page designed for children. "The science says you're my dad." I knew it all along. They high-fived, and I snapped a picture of their matching smiles, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But then the shock of a lifetime came when Hunter posted his results in the family WhatsApp group with excited messages about his genetic heritage. The post was followed by an unsettling silence, with only read receipts appearing as family members processed what they were seeing. It turned out that Gregory wasn't Hunter's biological father. The truth came crashing down hard, like a house of cards collapsing in slow motion. Vanessa had an affair more than a decade ago, and Hunter wasn't Gregory's child. The revelation hit the family like a wrecking ball, messages suddenly flooding the group chat before going eerily silent again. Gregory was devastated. He had raised Hunter as his own from birth, coaching his soccer teams, helping with science projects, and teaching him to drive, never suspecting that Vanessa had been unfaithful. His brief message to the group, "We need to talk," spoke volumes in its simplicity. To make matters worse, Gregory demanded a paternity test for their younger daughter, Willow, who was only 7. The results, shared privately with Declan by a shattered Gregory, confirmed his worst fears. He wasn't her father either. Vanessa's entire life, which she had worked so hard to craft into the perfect image on her carefully curated social media accounts, was unraveling before her eyes. And it wasn't a quiet, private unraveling, the whole family knew. And the fallout was ugly, playing out in missed family gatherings, tense phone calls, and a family WhatsApp group that suddenly went silent except for occasional messages about the children. Within days, Gregory had filed for divorce and moved out of their expensive townhouse into a small apartment nearby to stay close to the kids. Vanessa's world crumbled, and the once smug woman who had tried to destroy my family now found herself standing in the wreckage of her own making. The irony of the situation was impossible to ignore, hanging over every conversation like a dark cloud. Vanessa's attempt to tear apart my marriage by questioning Oliver's paternity had only led to the exposure of the lies in her own life. Lies she had maintained for over a decade while building her image as the perfect wife and mother. Hunter was hit the hardest by the revelation. He went from being a carefree, tech-savvy teenager with good grades and an active social life to a confused and heartbroken young man in what seemed like an instant. The man he had called Dad for his entire life wasn't his biological father, and now his family was falling apart before his eyes. His posts on social media stopped completely, and when he came to visit us, he was a shadow of his former self. Oliver, too, was affected by the change in his cousin. He and Hunter had always been close, despite their age difference. Hunter patiently teaching Oliver how to build with Legos and code simple games. And seeing his cousin go through such turmoil left him sad and anxious. He started asking questions that broke my heart. Why is Hunter so sad? Why doesn't Uncle Gregory come to dinner anymore? Are Hunter and Willow still my cousins? It was devastating to see him so worried about his cousin, his little forehead creased with concern too mature for his 5 years. As the days passed, Vanessa's life continued to unravel like a sweater caught on a nail. Gregory pushed for full custody of their kids, filing paperwork with a determination I'd never seen in him before. He was resolved to minimize Vanessa's influence in their lives, claiming her years of deception made her an unreliable parent. Vanessa, who had always been the one curating their family image, with her controlling ways, coordinating matching outfits for holiday photos, and dictating which activities the children could participate in, now looked like a shadow of her former self. At a small family dinner that Declan's parents insisted on hosting for the sake of the children, she was a nervous wreck. Her usually immaculate makeup couldn't hide her pallor, her designer clothes hung loosely on her frame, and her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy from crying. The perfectly filtered Instagram posts from her account had stopped completely. The woman who had once tried to make my life miserable with constant comparisons and subtle jabs now seemed utterly defeated, clutching her phone constantly, as if waiting for messages from her children that rarely came. Then one day, something unexpected happened that threw me completely off balance. Vanessa reached out to me directly. Not through family channels or via Declan, but to me personally. My phone lit up with her name, a name I'd often considered blocking, and against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice came through shaky and tearful, nothing like her usual confident tone. "Eliza, I need your help," she said, the words clearly difficult for her to form. "Please. You're the only one who might understand." She wanted me to talk to Gregory, to use my position as a caregiver and Declan's influence as a teacher to convince him to ease up on the custody arrangements. She was desperate to salvage whatever was left of her relationship with Hunter and Willow, and was asking me, of all people, for advice on how to rebuild trust with children who felt betrayed. At first, I was stunned into silence, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. After everything she had done, trying to undermine my marriage with that DNA test, years of belittling comments about my career choice, causing chaos at every family gathering, she had the audacity to ask for my help. The irony was almost too much to process. I told her I needed to think about it and hung up, my hands trembling slightly as I set my phone down. For the next 3 days, I ignored her subsequent calls and messages, unwilling to even entertain the idea of helping the woman who had tried to destroy my family. Every time my phone buzzed with her name, I felt a surge of angry satisfaction. Let her feel what it's like to be ignored and dismissed. But as the days went on, I found myself thinking more and more about Hunter. During my lunch breaks at the nursing home, I'd find myself staring at old family photos on my phone, Hunter patiently showing Oliver how to build a model rocket, the two of them covered in mud after a rainy day hike. Hunter was the real victim in all of this. None of this was his fault, and yet he was the one suffering the most from the adult's drama. My nursing training had taught me to look beyond surface behaviors to the pain underneath, and I couldn't ignore the pain this teenager was experiencing. Oliver, too, was struggling to understand why his favorite cousin's life had been turned upside down. Just yesterday, he'd asked me with those serious green eyes, "Is Hunter going to be okay, Mom?" He doesn't answer my texts about Minecraft anymore. I started to feel conflicted, torn between my justified anger at Vanessa and my concern for the children caught in the crossfire. Was it right to hold Vanessa's actions against her children? Should I put my own anger aside and help for the sake of the kids, using my professional experience with family trauma to guide them? Declan, of course, was far less conflicted. When I brought it up one night after Oliver was asleep, he was adamant that I should stay out of it. "Vanessa made her bed, and now she has to lie in it," he said firmly, pacing our small living room with tension visible in his shoulders. "You don't owe her anything, Eliza. Think about how she tried to destroy our family with that DNA test." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "She's only reaching out because she has no one else left. Don't let her manipulate you into fixing her mess." His protective instinct was in full force, and logically, I knew he was right. But part of me, the part that had chosen a caring profession and spent my days helping vulnerable elderly patients, couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I could help bring some peace to the children involved. I thought about Hunter's science project on display at the school science fair where Declan teaches, and little Willow's ballet performance that we'd attended just 2 months ago, her small face lighting up when she saw us in the audience. It wasn't their fault that their mother had made terrible choices that were now tearing apart their world. Every day at work, I saw the long-term effects of childhood trauma in my elderly patients' lives. Some wounds never fully heal, even decades later. So I found myself standing at a crossroads, caught between my justifiable resentment toward Vanessa and my concern for her children's well-being. My finger hovered over her name in my contacts list, unsure whether to return her latest call. Should I help Vanessa for the children's sake, potentially opening myself up to more manipulation and drama? Or should I let her deal with the consequences of her own actions, knowing that Hunter and Willow would inevitably be collateral damage? And now here I am, torn between doing what feels right professionally for the children and keeping my distance from the woman who has caused so much pain in our family. The weight of this decision sits heavy on my shoulders. What would you do if you were in my shoes, caught between professional ethics and personal boundaries? Update 1. Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to read my story and for all your thoughtful comments and messages. I didn't expect such an overwhelming response, and your support has meant a lot to me during this difficult time. It's been incredibly tough trying to navigate the emotional roller coaster I'm on right now, balancing my work at the nursing home, caring for Oliver, supporting Declan, and dealing with this family crisis all at once. Knowing there are people out there who understand and care has really helped me feel less alone in all of this. I wanted to give an update on what's been happening since my last post, and I hope it sheds some light on the complex situation we're dealing with. Vanessa is still constantly calling and messaging me, and to be honest, it's becoming exhausting and distracting me even during my shifts at work. I thought at some point she might back off or calm down, but she hasn't shown any signs of letting up. She's relentless, like someone drowning and grasping at anything that might keep her afloat. There was one particularly bad day last week where she called me 3 times in a row while I was trying to help a resident with physical therapy, leaving long, tearful voicemails that I had to listen to on my break. Please, Eliza, you're the only one who can help me. Gregory won't even look at me when he picks up the kids. Hunter barely speaks to me. I'm losing everything. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the makeup of her perfect life completely washed away. But after everything she's put us through over the years, it was hard to muster much sympathy beyond what my professional training instills. At one point, Declan got so frustrated with the constant interruptions to our family life that he couldn't take it anymore. He picked up my phone when it rang during our family dinner, something completely out of character for my usually patient husband. Declan rarely loses his cool. His elementary school students adore him for his calm demeanor. So when he called Vanessa back after dinner, I knew it was serious. I could hear the anger in his voice from across the kitchen where I was helping Oliver with homework, his tone sharper than I'd heard in years. This stops now, Vanessa, he said firmly, his knuckles white around the phone. I'm done with you disrespecting my wife and trying to manipulate our family. This isn't just about that DNA test, it's about years of snide comments, manipulation, and your complete disregard for boundaries. He paced our small kitchen as he listed specific incidents. The time she accidentally excluded us from a family vacation. The comments about my career being less successful than hers. Vanessa didn't take it well at all. She broke down crying on the phone, her sobs audible even from where I sat. She told Declan that I had poisoned his mind against her, that I was the one turning him away from his family, that she was just trying to protect the family name with the DNA test. Hearing her sob like that, twisting reality to make herself the victim, left me feeling conflicted. Part of me felt a sliver of sympathy for someone clearly in crisis, but mostly I was just tired of the drama she continuously brought into our lives. After that heated conversation with Declan, things actually got worse instead of better. Vanessa's tone shifted again in a way that gave me emotional whiplash. She started texting me repeatedly, sometimes as early as 5 and before my morning shift, swinging wildly between asking for help and accusing me of trying to ruin her life. One moment, she was pleading for my support. Please talk to Gregory. He respects you and Declan. The kids need their mother. I'm dying inside without them. The next, she was calling me manipulative. You've always been jealous of what I have. You're loving this, aren't you? Seeing my family fall apart while yours stays perfect. She even claimed I wanted to destroy her marriage because I resented her success and lifestyle. Her messages would come in bursts, 5 or 6 in quick succession, then silence for hours, then another barrage. It was as if she couldn't decide whether I was her enemy or her savior, and honestly, dealing with her emotional outbursts has been completely exhausting. I feel like I'm stuck on a roller coaster I didn't sign up for. trying to maintain professional composure at work, while my phone constantly buzzes with her alternating pleas and accusations. Through all of this chaos and drama, my biggest concern has consistently been the kids. They're innocent in all of this, yet they're the ones suffering the most from the adults' mistakes and conflicts. I can't stop thinking about Hunter and Oliver. The revelation about Hunter's biological father must have been devastating for a 14-year-old to process. Finding out your identity isn't what you thought it was, just as you're trying to figure out who you are. From my experience working with families in crisis situations at the nursing home, I know this kind of revelation can cause deep identity issues. It's clear from his withdrawn behavior and lack of engagement online that Hunter is struggling to process it all. It's hard for me to watch him go through this without being able to help in some concrete way. Oliver, on the other hand, doesn't fully understand what's going on, but he knows something is wrong with his cousin and extended family. Children are perceptive. They pick up on tension, even when we try to shield them from it. A few days ago, we had a small family gathering at Declan's parents' house, and Oliver was so excited to see Hunter, running around gathering his favorite toys to show him, just like old times. They used to be so close despite their age difference, with Hunter taking on a big brother role that Oliver adored. But when Hunter came over, I could see the change in him immediately. He was distant, his eyes downcast, shoulders hunched in his hoodie. He barely acknowledged Oliver's excitement, responding with one-word answers and quickly retreating to a corner with his phone. My heart broke watching the two boys who had once been like brothers now drifting apart before my eyes. Oliver kept following Hunter around, showing him a new science kit, asking him questions about coding that Hunter would normally love to answer. Why isn't Hunter laughing or playing like he used to? Oliver whispered to me after Hunter declined to join our board game for the third time. Is he mad at me? I didn't have the heart to tell him the complicated truth. Instead, I made up gentle excuses, telling him that Hunter was just tired from school or had a lot on his mind with high school projects. But deep down, looking at Oliver's confused little face, I knew it was much more than that, and I wondered how long these ripple effects would continue to impact all our lives. Meanwhile, Vanessa keeps sending me these long, dramatic texts that make my phone buzz constantly during my shifts at the nursing home. Just yesterday, she sent me a message with paragraphs of grievances, saying how she felt betrayed by our family and how we've abandoned her in her time of need. I honestly wanted to scream, and nearly did in the staff break room. How could she feel betrayed? It was her choices to cheat on her husband twice and lie about it for over a decade that led to this mess in the first place. But still, despite everything crumbling around her, she seems completely unable to take even a shred of responsibility for her actions. Reading her messages is like watching someone rewrite history in real time. It's always someone else's fault. Mine for turning Declan against her. Declan's for never accepting her. Gregory's for overreacting to ancient history, never, ever hers. Not once has she acknowledged the pain she's caused her own children. Declan and I have had countless late-night conversations about how to handle this, sitting at our kitchen table with cups of tea long after Oliver has gone to bed. The soft glow of our kitchen light reflecting off Declan's worried face has become a familiar sight these past weeks. We both want to do what's best for the kids, but we're increasingly unsure what that actually looks like in this situation. Declan, with his educator's perspective, believes we should step in and try to help Hunter directly, especially since he and Oliver have always had such a special bond despite their age difference. Hunter needs stable adults in his life right now, he argued last night, drumming his fingers nervously on the table. We could offer him a place to decompress, maybe even have him over for weekends sometimes. But he's also worried about the consequences of getting too involved with Vanessa's mess, concerned that her manipulation might create more problems for us all. She'll use any kindness as leverage, he sighed, running his hands through his hair. We've been trying to walk an incredibly fine line between being supportive of the kids and protecting our own family's peace. But it's been harder than we imagined, like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded. To complicate things further, Gregory has started reaching out to Declan directly, brother to brother, outside of the family group chat. He's been trying desperately to make sense of everything and wanted to talk about the situation without Vanessa's knowledge. Declan reluctantly agreed to meet him for coffee at a diner halfway between our houses last Saturday morning. When he came back 3 hours later, he looked more conflicted than I'd seen him in years, his shoulders slumped with the weight of Gregory's confessions. Gregory, understandably, is devastated on multiple levels. He told Declan that he feels like his entire life has been a carefully constructed lie. And now he's struggling to figure out how to co-parent with Vanessa after everything that's happened. He kept asking me, how do I look at her without seeing the betrayal? Declan told me, his voice cracking slightly. He showed me pictures of Hunter and Willow on his phone and just kept saying, they're still my kids. DNA doesn't change that. Talking to Gregory only made Declan more torn about our role in all this. Gregory is a good guy, a dedicated architect who designed his schedule around his kids' activities and coached Hunter's science club for years. And he's just trying to do the best he can for his children, despite the nightmare he's found himself in. After hearing Gregory's side of things, Declan is even more conflicted about how to move forward. He wants to help his brother navigate this impossible situation, but we both know that getting too involved could drag us further into Vanessa's drama and potentially affect our own family's stability. It's hard to know what the right thing to do is when there are no good options. Every time I see Hunter at family gatherings, with his hunched shoulders and eyes glued to his phone to avoid conversation, I feel an overwhelming urge to help him in some way. My nursing training kicks in, and I want to assess the damage and develop a care plan. He's just a kid caught in the middle of this adult disaster, and he doesn't deserve any of it. The psychological impact of discovering your parentage isn't what you thought must be enormous at 14, right when identity formation is so crucial. Oliver keeps asking why Hunter seems so sad all the time, tugging at my scrubs when I get home from work. Mom, can we invite Hunter for a sleepover to cheer him up? I could show him my new telescope. It breaks my heart that I can't give him a real answer that a 5-year-old would understand. The more I think about it, the more I feel torn between wanting to step in with the professional support I'm trained to provide and the very real fear of being pulled deeper into Vanessa's chaotic world of manipulation and drama. At the end of the day, all I want is to protect the kids on both sides of this mess. Hunter, Willow, and Oliver deserve better than this toxic environment, and it's painful to watch them suffer because of the selfish mistakes their parents made. I'm not sure what the future holds for our extended family, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing more harm to the innocent children caught in the crossfire. I'll keep you all posted on what happens next, and again, thank you for your thoughtful comments and continued support through this family crisis. Update 2. Hi guys, a lot has happened in the past few days, so buckle up and maybe grab a cup of coffee before reading this. It's been emotionally exhausting for all of us, and I'm honestly not sure how much longer this roller coaster will continue, but here's where we're at now. First of all, Vanessa decided she wanted to go through with a formal medical paternity test, insisting that Hunter and Willow accompany her to a professional lab. She wasn't satisfied with the results from the at-home DNA kit that Hunter had so innocently shared in the family group chat, claiming it wasn't a reliable source for making such important determinations about our family. To be fair, the at-home tests do have a small margin of error, as I learned from a colleague at the nursing home who used one. And I guess Vanessa was desperately clinging to whatever sliver of hope she had left that this might all be a horrible mistake. But guess what? The results didn't change one bit. The medical paternity test confirmed exactly what the original one did. Gregory is not the biological father of either Hunter or Willow. Vanessa just dug a deeper hole for herself and dragged her children through more unnecessary trauma in the process. Hunter later told Oliver, who innocently repeated it to us, that his mom cried in the doctor's office when they got the results, making the whole experience even more traumatic for him. I wasn't surprised by the outcome, given the accuracy of modern testing, but this official confirmation left absolutely no room for doubt or denial. Gregory especially seemed like he was trying to mentally prepare himself for the worst-case scenario. But when those medical test results came in, Declan said he could see that it still hurt his brother deeply. When Gregory came over to our house after receiving the news, he looked completely crushed, like the last fragile bit of hope he had been clinging to had been violently ripped away. He sat at our kitchen table, staring at the papers, his architectural designs forgotten in his bag. He had mentioned to Declan before that he didn't realistically expect some sort of miracle or lab error, but there was always that small part of him that hoped maybe, just maybe, the home test had been contaminated or misinterpreted. Seeing the confirmation in black and white medical terminology felt like a final nail in the coffin of his marriage and the life he thought he had built. 14 years, he kept repeating quietly. 14 years of memories, and she knew the whole time. After hearing the definitive news, Gregory became even more withdrawn from the extended family, not responding to messages except about logistics regarding the children. I could see a change coming in his demeanor, a certain hardening around the eyes, a tightness in his jaw when Vanessa's name was mentioned, but I didn't expect what happened next. Apparently, after processing the results for a couple of days, Gregory did some serious digital detective work and tracked down the man he believed Vanessa had the affair with. From what Gregory later told Declan during a tense phone call, this guy was a former colleague of Vanessa's from the advertising agency where she worked over a decade ago. Gregory had harbored suspicions about their relationship for years, noticing how Vanessa would light up whenever this man's name was mentioned. But she had always dismissively brushed it off as just work stuff and accused Gregory of being paranoid. Now the timeline of events all made perfect, painful sense to Gregory. He had recalled specific moments where Vanessa and this man were unusually close, attending work events together, exchanging texts late at night that Vanessa would quickly hide, inside jokes that excluded everyone else. She always had elaborate excuses, convincing Gregory it was all innocent professional interaction. But now it seemed like all of those long-buried suspicions were erupting to the surface at once. So Gregory made a decision that would further complicate everything. He tracked down this former colleague to his house in a neighboring suburb and went over there without telling anyone, not even Declan. From what we gathered later from both Gregory's shame-filled confession and the police report, Gregory wasn't in a rational state of mind when he made this impulsive decision. He was hurt, angry, and desperate for answers that might make sense of the last 14 years of his life. Things escalated quickly once he confronted the man at his front door. The guy apparently denied everything at first, claiming he hadn't even spoken to Vanessa in years, but Gregory wasn't having any of it. He pulled out copies of the paternity test results, demanding to know if the man knew he had 2 children with Vanessa. It quickly turned into a shouting match on the front lawn, neighbors peering out their windows at the disturbance, and it didn't take long before things unfortunately became physical. Gregory, the same man who carefully designed playground spaces for safety and taught Hunter to always walk away from conflicts, completely lost control. Neighbors heard the commotion and called the police. By the time officers arrived, both Gregory and the man were visibly injured, with Gregory sporting a bloody lip and the other man nursing what looked like the beginning of a black eye. Gregory ended up getting arrested for assault right there on the lawn, and now he's facing serious charges that could impact his architectural license and, most devastatingly, his custody case. It's an absolute mess that just keeps getting messier. Declan had to go down to the police station to help Gregory out, calling me from the car in a panic. "I never thought I'd be bailing my brother out of jail," he said, his voice tight with worry. He managed to post bail, but Gregory is facing some truly serious legal issues now that could impact his professional standing and livelihood. He's trying to claim the fight was provoked by emotional distress, but his lawyer has warned that's going to be extremely tough to prove in court, given that he was the one who showed up uninvited at the man's home. The whole situation just keeps spiraling further out of control, expanding like ripples in a pond. And I can't help but feel like all of this stems from Vanessa's decision to hide the truth for so many years, building a family on a foundation of lies. Gregory is unraveling before our eyes, and it's heartbreaking to watch someone who was always so composed and methodical. The man who planned family vacations with color-coded itineraries and designed award-winning buildings fall apart like this, his entire identity and future in question. Meanwhile, Vanessa has been frantically scrambling to do damage control across all fronts, but it's far, far too late for simple fixes. Gregory has now officially filed for full custody of both Hunter and Willow, using the affair, the paternity tests, and Vanessa's years of deception as evidence that she is fundamentally unfit as a mother. Vanessa is in complete panic mode, her carefully constructed social media presence abandoned as she fights for her children. She's trying to convince everyone in the family and their shared social circles that Gregory is actually the problem, calling him unstable and potentially dangerous, and using the fight as proof that he's a threat to the children's well-being. The same children she lied to about their parentage for their entire lives. She's absolutely terrified that Gregory is going to take Hunter and Willow away from her permanently, destroying the perfect family image she's cultivated for years. And she's lashing out viciously at anyone who doesn't immediately take her side, including her own parents who've expressed disappointment in her choices. The tension between Vanessa and Gregory is escalating by the day in a way that's palpable even through text messages. Gregory is understandably furious with her for years of calculated lies, and Vanessa is desperate to maintain some semblance of control over her rapidly disintegrating life, which seems to be crumbling around her despite her frantic efforts. I can see the terrible toll it's taking on both of them. Gregory looking gaunt and sleepless when we see him. Vanessa's increasingly erratic messages and appearance. But more importantly, I'm deeply worried about how all this adult conflict is affecting Hunter and Willow, who are caught in the middle of a war they never asked for. Gregory has been talking seriously about moving out of state with the kids once the custody battle is resolved, wanting to put physical distance between them and Vanessa and all the painful associations of their current community. He believes that a completely fresh start is what the children need to heal, far away from the whispers and chaos that now surrounds their family name. But from my professional experience with family trauma, I'm not convinced that's the best approach. I understand his natural desire to protect them from further pain, but uprooting children from their school, friends, and familiar environment in the midst of already earth-shattering changes could potentially do more harm than good, adding another layer of loss to what they're already processing. And legally, as Declan researched online, it's going to be an extremely tough battle to get court approval for such a move, especially with pending assault charges. Vanessa, as always, is in full meltdown mode that would rival any crisis I've witnessed at the nursing home. She's been calling me nonstop during all hours, during my shifts, during Oliver's bath time, during the precious few moments of peace Declan and I managed to find, alternating wildly between begging for my professional help as a caregiver and viciously accusing me of turning Declan against her. "You never liked me from the beginning," she sobbed in one voicemail, only to text an hour later, "You're enjoying watching my life fall apart, aren't you?" It's emotionally exhausting to deal with her dramatic swings, like watching someone with two entirely different personalities. One minute, she's pleading for support through tears, claiming she's been terribly wronged by everyone around her. And the next, she's ranting about how Declan and I are part of some elaborate conspiracy to destroy her family and steal her children's affection. Her accusations have become increasingly unhinged and disconnected from reality. I wish I could say that I didn't feel any sympathy for this woman who's caused our family so much grief. But part of me, the nurse who's trained to care for people at their most vulnerable, does feel the pull of compassion. She's clearly spiraling in a way that's beginning to seem clinically concerning. But at the same time, I can't ignore the fact that she's brought this entire situation on herself through years of calculated deception. It's difficult to watch someone self-destruct so completely, their carefully constructed facade crumbling to reveal the chaos underneath. But it's even harder when they stubbornly refuse to take any responsibility whatsoever for their own actions. My professional training has taught me about the stages of grief, and she seems stuck firmly in denial and anger, unable to move toward acceptance. The last time I saw Vanessa at a family gathering that Declan's parents insisted on hosting for the children's sake, she looked like she hadn't slept in days or perhaps weeks. Her designer clothes hung loosely on her frame. Her normally immaculate makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her phone, checking it obsessively every few minutes. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and she kept repeating the same phrases over and over like a broken record. Everything is falling apart. Gregory is trying to take my kids away. This isn't fair. She's in complete denial that her own choices, her affairs, her years of deception, her refusal to come clean when the first test results appeared, are what led to this devastating mess. She still remarkably sees herself as the helpless victim in all of this. And that's what makes it so incredibly difficult to communicate with her in any meaningful way. She's desperately trying to shift all the blame onto Gregory, portraying him as controlling and unstable, but anyone who's been paying even the slightest attention can see that the situation is far more complex than her simplistic narrative suggests. Her inability to acknowledge her role makes any real conversation impossible. At this point, after weeks of trying to maintain some distance, I don't think Declan and I have any other choice but to get more directly involved in this family crisis. We're already knee-deep in this mess, whether we like it or not. The children are suffering. Gregory is facing legal troubles, and the ripple effects are touching everyone in the family. Declan thinks we should explicitly support Gregory and help him navigate the legal issues he's facing, especially since Gregory has proven himself to be the more stable and child-focused parent throughout this ordeal. "He's my brother," Declan said last night, "and more importantly, he's a good father who's putting those kids first despite everything." But I'm increasingly worried about the psychological impact this entire situation is having on the children caught in the crossfire. They're trapped in the middle of a bitter battle they didn't ask for. And I'm terrified, as both a mother and a healthcare professional, that Hunter and Willow are going to be the ones who suffer the most significant long-term damage. Hunter especially seems to be struggling in ways that break my heart. He's always been a sensitive, thoughtful kid, the kind who would spend hours helping Oliver build elaborate structures and patiently explaining how things work. And I've noticed a profound change in him since all of this started unraveling. He's quieter, more withdrawn from family interactions, his shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. When he does speak, his words are carefully measured, as if he's afraid of saying the wrong thing and making the situation worse. It's clear that he's deeply confused about what's happening to his family and his own identity. I can't imagine the existential crisis he must be experiencing at 14, right when kids are figuring out who they are. To suddenly discover that the man you've called Dad your whole life, who taught you to ride a bike and helped with your science projects, isn't actually your biological father. The foundations of his world have been completely shattered. Oliver has asked me several times in his innocent 5-year-old way why Hunter doesn't want to play their coding games anymore, or why he doesn't answer texts about their Minecraft world. And it breaks my heart into tiny pieces every single time. Is Hunter still my cousin if Uncle Gregory isn't his real dad? He asked yesterday at bedtime, and I struggled to find words that would make sense to him without adding to the confusion. The situation continues spiraling further out of control with each passing day, and I honestly don't know how or when it's going to finally stabilize. Every time I think things can't possibly get any worse, something new and even more dramatic happens that drags us all deeper into the chaotic vortex that Vanessa's lies have created. We're just trying desperately to take things one day at a time, focusing on supporting the children and maintaining some sense of normalcy for Oliver's sake. Declan and I pray for the best outcome possible given the circumstances, clinging to the hope that eventually the adults will put the children's needs first. But it's increasingly difficult to stay optimistic when the future looks so uncertain and the collateral damage continues to spread. I'll keep you all updated as things continue to unfold. But right now, we're just holding on tight and hoping for some kind of resolution that doesn't completely destroy the lives of these innocent kids who never asked for any of this. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's time for what I hope will be the final update to this painful chapter in our family's story. A tremendous amount has happened since my last post, and I think things are finally starting to settle into a new normal, though it's been an emotional roller coaster for everyone involved. We're not completely out of the woods yet by any means, but it seems like the worst might finally be behind us. I've been reflecting deeply on everything that's transpired over these past months, and I wanted to share how things have ultimately unfolded in hopes it might provide some closure for those who've been following our family's journey. First, let's talk about Gregory and the man Vanessa had an affair with. You all know from my previous update how that confrontation led to Gregory getting arrested after things turned physical outside the man's home. What I didn't share before is that the situation escalated even further in unexpected ways. Initially, we were terrified that Gregory might be facing serious assault charges that could impact his architectural license and custody case. But in a surprising turn of events, the man ultimately decided not to press charges after the initial police report. From what Gregory told Declan during a long conversation on our back deck, it sounds like this man, once he processed the shock, wanted to distance himself as much as possible from the whole messy situation. Gregory believes he probably realized that his continued involvement could potentially expose his own past behavior and make things considerably worse for him, both personally and professionally. While this man did reluctantly admit to the affair when questioned by police at the scene, he has since completely cut all ties with both Gregory and Vanessa, changing his phone number and increasing privacy settings on all social media accounts. In a way, that particular chapter of this complicated story has closed with a whimper rather than the bang we feared. And honestly, I think that's ultimately for the best for everyone involved. Gregory doesn't need to waste any more emotional energy fighting with someone who clearly never cared about the consequences of his actions, and who has no interest in the children he helped bring into the world. Now for the part about the children, which has been by far the most emotionally draining aspect of this whole ordeal for everyone who truly cares about their well-being. As you know from my previous updates, Gregory had initially filed for full custody of both Hunter and Willow in the heat of anger and betrayal, which understandably sent Vanessa into a complete panic, triggering her most erratic behavior. But after several tough conversations with his lawyer, family counselors, and some profound personal reflection, Gregory experienced what I can only describe as a breakthrough in his approach to the situation. He realized with absolute clarity that no matter what the genetic tests say about biology, Hunter and Willow are still unquestionably his children in every way that truly matters. He's been their father since the moment they entered this world, reading bedtime stories, bandaging skinned knees, attending every school play and science fair, teaching them his values, loving them, raising them, and guiding them through life's challenges. That profound bond isn't something that can be broken or diminished by a DNA test or by Vanessa's betrayal. Gregory told Declan and me during a quiet dinner at our house, the first time I'd seen him smile in weeks, that he's no longer fighting for custody out of anger or desire for revenge against Vanessa. Instead, he's approaching the situation with a singular focus on protecting Hunter and Willow from the ongoing chaos and emotional volatility that Vanessa's unprocessed emotions continue to create. He's determined to shield them from the worst fallout of her actions while still maintaining their relationship with their mother. And he's been absolutely incredible throughout this entire process, despite his own pain. It's so clear how deeply he loves those children, and that unwavering love has been his guiding light through this darkness. He's made it a point to repeatedly remind them, through both words and actions, that no matter what happens between him and Vanessa, no matter what legal documents or genetic tests might say, they will always be his children. His love for them is completely unconditional and unchangeable, and he's not going anywhere ever. The way Gregory handled the necessary conversations with the children was truly remarkable, a testament to his strength of character. He sat them down one evening at his new apartment, which he'd set up with their favorite things to help them feel at home, and explained the complicated situation in a way that was age-appropriate and thoughtful, not burdening them with more adult information than they could handle, but providing enough context so they could begin to understand why their family structure was changing. Most importantly, he repeatedly reassured them that they hadn't done anything wrong, and that absolutely none of this situation was their fault in any way. Hunter, especially, has been having an understandably difficult time processing everything, but I could see during our last family dinner that hearing directly from Gregory that he's still unconditionally his dad, regardless of biology, has helped ease some of the confusion and identity crisis he was experiencing. Declan reports that Hunter has slowly begun participating more in school activities again, and he's even started helping with the robotics team my husband supervises. I can see that Hunter is still struggling with trust issues, which is completely understandable, but he doesn't seem as lost and withdrawn as he was during those first devastating weeks. There's a spark returning to his eyes, especially when he's working on technical projects with Oliver. Vanessa, on the other hand, has been a complete emotional wreck throughout this process, failing to rise to the occasion when her children need her most. She's still in full panic mode, cycling through phases of hysteria, manipulation, and self-pity, trying desperately but ineffectively to salvage her relationship with the children and her social standing. Unfortunately, she's not approaching this crisis in a way that prioritizes Hunter and Willow's emotional needs. Instead of focusing on providing them stability and reassurance, she's been entirely wrapped up in her own problems and emotions, frantically trying to manage her crumbling public image and fix the mess she created without acknowledging her role in creating it. She brings them expensive gifts and takes them on elaborate outings when they're with her, documenting everything for social media, but doesn't seem to connect with what they're actually feeling. Meanwhile, Gregory has been the one consistently attending their school events, taking them to doctor and therapy appointments, checking in with their teachers, and making sure they feel supported through this transition. It's heartbreaking to watch as a fellow mother, but Vanessa seems fundamentally more concerned with how her family appears from the outside than with addressing what's actually happening emotionally inside her family. Her Instagram posts have become increasingly desperate attempts to project normalcy, while the reality remains far different. The custody battle is still ongoing, but Gregory has thoughtfully adjusted his approach based on what's best for the children, rather than his own hurt feelings. He's now pushing for joint custody instead of the full custody he initially sought, acknowledging that Hunter and Willow still need their mother in their lives, despite the pain she's caused. Gregory is making a genuine effort to be the bigger person here, recognizing that as deeply hurtful as Vanessa's deception has been to him personally, the children shouldn't lose their relationship with their mother completely. That said, Gregory is still firmly requesting primary physical custody because he's clearly demonstrated he's been the more stable, child-focused parent throughout this crisis. He wants to ensure the children have a consistent sense of security and normalcy, which they've been desperately missing since this whole situation exploded. From what our family has heard through Gregory's lawyer, the court appears to be leaning in Gregory's favor based on the preliminary hearings. He systematically demonstrated that he's the parent providing day-to-day stability for Hunter and Willow, and his unwavering devotion to them has been evident to everyone from teachers to family court evaluators. Vanessa, unfortunately, continues to sabotage her own legal case with her behavior. Instead of focusing on what the children need during this transition, she's still making every court appearance and evaluation about herself, attempting to paint herself as the victim of circumstances and using Gregory's one-time confrontation with her former lover as evidence that he's potentially dangerous and unfit. She's hired an aggressive attorney who keeps bringing up the assault incident, but it's become increasingly obvious to everyone involved, including the family court judge, that Gregory's uncharacteristic outburst came from a place of profound hurt after discovering a decade of betrayal, and he's been doing everything possible to move forward in a healthy, child-centered way since then. He's attending parenting classes, seeing a therapist, and documenting every aspect of his involvement in the children's lives. As for Vanessa and Gregory's marriage, that chapter is definitively closed. The divorce proceedings are well underway, with financial negotiations being the main outstanding issue, and there's absolutely no going back to what was. Gregory seems finally at peace with that reality in a way that's visible in his posture and expressions. He told Declan and me during our last family dinner that he's no longer angry at Vanessa, which represents tremendous emotional progress. "I'm just sad," he confided quietly while the children played in the next room. "Sad for what our family could have been. Sad for how our relationship ended after 14 years. And most of all, sad for the confusion and pain this has caused Hunter and Willow." Despite this lingering sadness, he's clearly focused on moving forward rather than dwelling in bitterness. Gregory's absolute priority now is providing his children with stability and love, and he's putting everything, his energy, his resources, his heart, into being the best father he can possibly be under these challenging circumstances. Declan and I are doing relatively okay through all of this family turmoil. It's been emotionally draining watching everything unfold and trying to provide support without completely sacrificing our own family's stability. We've tried to maintain appropriate boundaries while still being there for Gregory and especially for the children. Oliver and Hunter have maintained their special bond through all of this, which has been a bright spot in the darkness. We've been intentionally making sure the boys have regular time together, weekend sleepovers, science projects, and outdoor activities to help Hunter cope with the massive changes in his life and to give Oliver the cousin relationship that means so much to him. I think these consistent connections have been beneficial for both of them, providing Hunter with a sense of continuity when everything else feels so unstable, and giving Oliver the opportunity to help someone he cares about in his own 5-year-old way. One profound lesson I've internalized through this entire ordeal is just how remarkably resilient children can be when they're surrounded by genuine love and stability. Despite the chaos swirling around them, Gregory's steady, unconditional love for Hunter and Willow has been the anchor that's kept them from completely losing their emotional moorings. All of us in the extended family have been trying to help in our various ways. Declan offering male guidance to Hunter, me providing a listening ear, the grandparents maintaining normal family traditions. But at the end of the day, it's Gregory's unwavering strength and commitment that will ultimately guide these children through this difficult chapter of their lives. Watching him prioritize their well-being despite his own pain has been a powerful example of what true parenting looks like. I'm cautiously hopeful that this will be the last major development in this particular family crisis. Things are still evolving, particularly with the legal aspects, but I'm genuinely optimistic that the worst is behind us now that everyone is settling into new routines and expectations. The children are still surrounded by people who love them deeply. And in the end, that foundation of love is what matters most for their long-term well-being. The next chapter of our extended family story won't be perfect. There will still be challenging days and emotional hurdles to overcome, but I believe it will be one focused on healing, growth, and eventually, a different kind of peace than what we had before.